In 1981, Kiss, a band not known for their narrative approach to songwriting, decide to make a mystical quest album. What could possibly go wrong? Kiss were in a weird place at the beginning of the 1980s. Having won the hearts and panties of America's youth in the 70s, they were now looking to revive their lagging fortunes and perhaps garner some critical approval. The answer, it seems, was to record a concept album. And in comes Bob Ezrin on his white Charger, still bruised from banging his head against Pink Floyd's wall, figured he could add something to this project. And add something he certainly did. He scaled down the band's bluster, poured syrupy strings all over the project, sweetening the overall sound, ultimately leading to something that we could listen to without embarrassment. Well, almost. And the glaring irony of it all is Gene, that exemplar of sobriety, was right behind this one, whereas the permanently bombed Ace suffered a profound moment, a clarity of vision, and called this out for what it was, a really bad idea. Ezrin gives this project a grandeur beyond itself. The story is that Kiss actually played this record to the record company executives, and their response was a resounding, "What the fuck is this?" And the reaction of Kiss fans wasn't much better, feeling that Gene had just handed them a freshly laid demonic turd. But if we wind things back a bit, of course, Kiss went through their disco years, and the Dynasty album, which for my sins I actually enjoyed. We got the Unmasked album afterwards, which is a poppier album. It's not as good as Dynasty, I think, although it does have a few good tunes. But the band seemed to be permanently deaf to the backlash from the fans who were looking for a return to that hard rock, traditional Kiss sound. I often wonder if the popularity of the single Shandy, which was a huge hit in Australia, did somehow blinded the group to the direction they were on. I don't know. They do say those that live at the top of ivory towers rarely get to smell what's being shovelled at their feet. Apparently the band were stung by the negative criticism that the Unmasked album received, and called an emergency meeting with Bill O'Coin. And they came to the decision they needed something big in order to revive their fortunes. They looked to return to the kind of hard rocking traditional Kiss album in the Destroyer mode. But apparently they abandoned the project halfway through. They felt the material was nothing more than a rehashing of older songs. And it was then that they rather foolishly decided to embark on this concept project based on a story penned by Gene Simmons. I don't know, maybe he was suffering from pussy fatigue or something like that. Gene says in his autobiography, "We were convinced we were making our Sgt. Pepper." But let's face it, this project was doomed from the get-go. Concept albums weren't particularly in vogue in 1981. It's a genre of album that is associated with progressive rock with the 1970s. And Kiss, a band known for their party anthems, Rock and Roll All Night and Shout It Out Loud, were perhaps not best placed in 1981 to breathe new life into the festering corpse of the concept album. And besides, we were all listening to Two by Army by then. Apparently Simmons was inspired by his collection of medieval-themed fantasy comic books. And the narrative, of course, he decided to write a medieval-themed story that would hopefully also become a Hollywood blockbuster. The story is about an ancient race of guardian gods called the Elder, who kept watch over the world and chose a champion to defend it whenever evil rises. Apparently nobody outside of the Kiss camp, which consisted of the 4 band members and Bob Ezrin, were privy to this medieval hard rock pottage that they were stirring up behind closed doors. I think Bob Ezrin, almost fresh from Pink Floyd's Wall, decided to get involved with what he saw as a big statement. The fact that he was shoveling his way through mountains of coke at the time probably didn't help and probably clouded his judgment. I'll leave that one for you to decide. Nevertheless, he felt that this Kiss folly would benefit from his production nous. And to add insult to injury, shortly before this album was released in November 1981, I believe, the sequence was altered, which of course rendered the already garbled storyline now completely incomprehensible. When this album came out, it was an embarrassment, says Gene Simmons. And due to the toxic reaction this album received, they decided not to tour it. Instead, just limiting their promotional activities just to a few TV performances. And the rock critics at Kiss were hoping to win over were largely unimpressed. A few gave reviews, gave the album some grudging respect for its ambition, but very little else. Music from the Elder performed even worse than Unmasked, notching a lowly position of number 75 on the Billboard charts before sliding to oblivion. The reason it bombed, I suppose musically, it's just not what we expect from Kiss, and certainly not what we wanted from Kiss. It's completely uncharacteristic. Nevertheless, some of the songs I think are not half bad. If you replace the indecipherable lyrics, I think you'd have some pretty good Kiss tunes there. The Ace Frehley track, Dark Light, is not bad, and I think the instrumental Escape from the Island is quite good as well. Even worse was the dreadful video, A World Without Heroes, where you get that tear drizzling down the demonic cheek of Gene Simmons. Somebody hand me a bucket. There were some interesting video performances of the band performing songs from the Elder. For example, the performance of I was broadcast on European TV, without Ace Frehley. I think Ace Frehley had already bailed at this point. To answer the question that is embedded in the title of this video, is it really that bad? It's not great. There are Elder enthusiasts. Gene Simmons laughs that there are Elder enthusiasts that insist the band go out on the road and play the album in its entirety. But gee, that's not going to happen, is it? Thankfully, the band saw the error of their ways after this album and returned with a blistering, hard rock classic Kiss album, Creatures of the Night. After all, William Blake said that the fool that persists in his folly will eventually become wise. So what do you think of this record? Are you a huge fan that I've grievously wounded with my critique of it? I'd love to hear your comments below. Anyway, if you've enjoyed this video, please do click like, subscribe and check that notification bell. And check some of the links below this video for ways you can support the sterling work done here at Classic Album Review. It's always much appreciated. So I will leave you with my closing salvo, which is, hope you're well, staying safe, but more importantly that you keep listening.